All right, welcome into a Sunday night edition of Chatterbox Reds. I am glad to be back. Nick Kirby is in the house as always, and we are going to discuss a losing edition of Chatterbox Reds. They fall 8-2 to the San Francisco Giants. And Nick, I've not been back since Friday. I'm glad to see the offense on Friday really showcase their skill sets at the best of their abilities. Saturday, they bounced back, and now tonight, by tonight I mean today, they find themselves in the losing column again. And I think that there's a lot of things that I'd like to say tonight, and I'm going to get off my chest. I'm going to do it in a respectful manner, of course. And by respectful, I mean the way that I think it's respectful. Some might not view it that way, but we shall find out. I haven't really talked to you in 3 days. I guess, as always, I just overall, are you okay? I mean, I know it's not going too well for the home team, so it doesn't always help.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Life is good. No complaints here.
All right.
Let's do a show. How about you? How was your weekend?
It was fantastic, It really was fantastic. I got to play a lot of golf. There's one time a year where I go on a golf trip, and I play a lot of golf, and I played a lot of good golf. And there's a champion that's awarded on Sundays, forward-man team, and I was on it. I was on that team. So
let's go.
Yeah,
let's go.
So I came home a champ, and then I realized I had to do Chatterbox Reds tonight, which was perfectly fine by me. I love Chatterbox Reds, but I realized at that point that I wasn't really a champ anymore because we were in the cellar. But we'll discuss maybe why.
I would feel sorry for you if I just didn't do a show after a no-hitter 2 days ago. So,
yeah, no, I mean, listen, this team sucks, and I'm here to tell you about it. I've been trying to tell you about it in a nice way for a little while, but now I'm going to do it exactly how I want to do it, and I think it's very evident. It's been evident, and if you know anything about baseball, you watch baseball for a while, you've probably known for a while that this team's just not all that good. And when I say not good, I mean they suck. And by suck, I mean they are one of the world's worst teams that play in Major League Baseball outside of like maybe 3 or 4 other teams. They are a bottom feeder, in my opinion. And we have some topics to discuss. I'm not going to go off the rails yet. I need to stay on the rails. And in order to stay on the rails, we do a box score recap to start every show. So we're going to do that now before we get completely out of the weeds, because I have a feeling this show might go completely sideways at some point, and that's fine. I'm man enough to admit it. Well, we'll do the box score recap presented by you first, because you, as always, work absurdly hard on this damn show every single day. So you could put on there that, I don't know, Jamie Candelario went 1 for 4 with a home run, and I can't wait for you to tell us about it.
All right. Reds taking on the Giants, rubber game of a 3-game series at Great American Ballpark. Carson Spiers against Robbie Ray. Both pitchers had a 1-2-3 first. Both pitchers struck out 2 batters in the first inning. In the bottom of the second with 2 outs, Jamie Candelario hit a solo home run to left center field, putting the Reds up 1-0. Santiago Espinal then made it back-to-back homers, 2-0 Reds. Espinal set a new career high with 8 homers. Carson Spiers cruised through the first 3 innings. He only allowed 1 base runner, but in the top of the 4th, he gave up a weak single and then a 2-run home run that was absolutely crushed by Matt Chapman. That tied the game up at 2. Robbie Ray was dominant after that second inning. The only thing the Reds accomplished the rest of the way was getting his pitch count up. The Reds' best chance after the second inning came in Ray's final inning in the 5th. Santiago Espinal singled, stole second for a new career high with 7 stolen bases. Career high day for Espinal. Then Espinal stole third base too, and that got the Reds a runner on third with 1 out. But Luke Maile and Jonathan India struck out to end the inning. In the top of the 6th, Lamonte Wade Jr. continued his good fortune against the Reds this season. He had a 364-foot home run. That was only a home run in 4 of 30 ballparks. You might remember earlier this season in San Francisco, he had a homer that was a home run in San Francisco and nowhere else. Nonetheless, it put the Reds down 3-2. In the bottom of the 6th, Elly De La Cruz was hit by a pitch by the Giants' best reliever this season, Ryan Walker. Elly moved to second base on a fielder's choice, then stole third base for stolen base number 57. And for a second straight inning, the Reds had a runner on third with just 1 out, but Ty France struck out. TJ Friedel then came to the plate, pinch hitting on his bobblehead day. Friedel hit a weak dribbler that looked like a surefire run for the Reds, but Giants third baseman Matt Chapman made one of the best plays you'll see this season to get Friedel out and keep the score 3-2 Giants. And then it all fell apart. Sam Moll came back out in the top of the 8th after getting the final 2 outs of the 7th. He gave up a single. Then David Bell went to Fernando Cruz. Cruz gave up a 2-run bomb to Tyler Fitzgerald, 5-2 Giants. 2 more runners got on base with Cruz on the mound. He didn't get an out. David Bell went to Yasver Zulueta, who gave up back-to-back doubles, and it was 8-2 Giants, and that would end up being your final score. Reds now 53-58. Reds have lost 9 straight games on a Sunday. Reds have lost the series finale in 5 of their last 6, with the only win being that finale against the Braves that actually shouldn't have been a finale because the game got rained out.
We did have a deep drive of the day, and you know what? Santiago Espinal deserves a lot of credit. Of all the people and of all the things that are going to get said on this show about maybe some people that play for the Reds or maybe the organization as a whole, we should exclude Santiago Espinal from maybe some of this abysmal play as of late, because he's been one hell of a baseball player. And as of late, I should say, let's all keep things in perspective here. His 8th home run of the year. It is the DSC deep drive of the day. I almost said 197. It wasn't 197. It was 97.3, 396 feet. That would give the Reds a 2-0 lead, which would actually make the win probability for your Reds a 72.8% probability. But as we all know, it would end up being 0%. And the deep drive of the day is sponsored by DSC, and they are a leader in renewable commodities for biofuel production, specializing in used cooking oil collection, aggregation, and sales. Visit www.deepsouthcommodities.com for more information, and thank you to John and his team. As always, series loss, you have that on the rundown. Certainly an opportunity, if anything, to keep the season alive today. We've reached the breaking point for me. We already kind of were there, Nick. I know you can always say, well, season's not dead, this not dead. There's still going to be some things to talk about all year, and I'm not here to suggest for a single second that there aren't fun, interactions that we're going to have, and there's no reason to listen to the show anymore. Oh, the season's over, never come back. That's dumb. That's not what I'm getting at here. But I think that there becomes a very clear line in the sand on, hey, if you can't do X, Y, Z by this date, it's curtains. And I think today, in a way, felt like that. And I'm not trying to be, too morbid here, but, I think it's pretty safe to say season's dead. Maybe I'm wrong. And if I am, my God, what a great clip this could be. I hope it is. I hope I get dragged through the streets for it. But I think there's bigger questions looming than just what the 2024 Reds are. I'm sure we'll get into that. Today's game, though, Nick, I guess the biggest question mark, David Bell is going to be a huge topic. I think you guys probably already talked about that maybe on the previous few shows. Biggest thing, though, is kind of like, what do you want to get mad about David Bell for? You have kind of maybe a bullpen usage situation now, specifically with Fernando Cruz. He's throwing a ton of innings, Nick. He kind of feels like he's burning out. You're watching it in real time, and yet you talked about this a week ago. You said, I'd just sit Fernando Cruz down for like 35, 40 days and just give him a vacation, if you want to call it that, or give him some semblance of an IL stint, just to try to make sure that you don't run him into the ground. No, Nick just keeps running him out there. I don't know what, he must see something different than you see.
Yeah, I do not understand the Fernando Cruz usage. Seems like that's the move that just David Bell keeps making. I really don't understand that at all. Again, you never know who's available, who's not available, but I don't know. I know the Reds are going tomorrow with Nick Martinez. They're probably going to try to use Jacob Junis, so they're trying to conserve their 2 longer guys, but I don't know why you keep going to Fernando Cruz in these spots. And I feel like the Reds have honestly kind of done Fernando Cruz dirty this year. I really do. I get like earlier in the year, the margin for error was so thin.
Yep.
That you needed like to win every single one of those games just to be what, 5 or 6, whatever, however many games the Reds are.
We're
under
trying to stay
500 right now.
relevant. Trying to stay relevant.
And I mean, Fernando Cruz helped the Reds stay relevant earlier this year by being dominant, but they also ran him to the ground in the process, and it's like they almost don't want to admit that they did that.
Yeah. Listen, I think David Bell has the Fernando Cruz situation to probably have a real honest discussion and or answer for if he were to be asked that. The other thing that I think the David Bell bandwagon of with basically the fire David Bell bandwagon is what I'm getting at, that they probably are clinging to at this point, are one, where the Reds stand right now. Two, what the Reds have done from a winning standpoint, postseason success standpoint since he's started, whether that's fair or unfair. And the other thing that you're going to hear as of late right now, Nick, as well, are one-run games and whether or not you should directly associate one-run games with what the manager is responsible for, whether they win or lose. I don't know, if you have a thought basically on any of those or all of them or just one of them, but that's what I think David Bell is going to start getting critiqued by, at least from the fan base. No idea what the ownership group's doing. No idea. Not sure if Nick Kroll has a say with the whole manager situation, but that's my thoughts.
I've reached a point where I don't really care anymore. Like, if you fire him. It's become such a toxic talking point at this point that it's going to make some people happy and it's going to give some people some false hope that's going to make them feel better. And I guess there's some value in that. But I feel like you're completely misguiding your anger. The Reds have only been projected to finish above 500 in one season that David Bell's been the Reds manager. One. And that was 2020 when they finished above 500. So you should probably be mad at the ownership group, which, I'm not as critical certainly as other people. I think you should, it should be well above David Bell, the ownership group, and then the front office, the teams that actually are responsible for putting the teams on the field that were projected to lose, were expected to be below 500.
Right.
So, again, I don't really care. Like, fire David Bell. It's going to make people feel happy. It's going to give people false hope. If you think that David Bell's the reason that the Reds are where they're at right now and you think firing him is going to fix it, you want to talk about some false hope for next year. That's certainly it. Now, on the one-run games, I don't know. I mean, one-run games are so fluky. Last year, the Reds were 34-29 in one-run games. I think David Bell was the manager. How about this? In 2022, the year the Reds lost 100 games, the Reds were 21-23. So David Bell just magically managed well in those games, or close to 500 in those games. I don't know, man. It's tough. But again, I don't really care anymore. I really don't.
You've been broken.
I've been broken on this.
I would say this about David Bell. I don't think that he shouldn't be the scapegoat. If we're going to sit here and discuss whether or not or what the real issue is, we've given Nick Kroll a lot of credit on this show, this organization, this company, whatever term you want to use. It all comes down to where do you see the hole in what the actual situation or what the actual issue is? And if you've watched this show long enough or you've listened to what I had to say, I think it's a very much systemic issue. I do. I'm not trying to make excuses for anybody, but if you don't think that it's a systemic issue, then I think you have your head in the sand about Major League Baseball. And I'll tell you this, I think that the analytic community has given a pass far too often to this league for the absolute nonsense that they're trying to run in regards to a full, relatively quote-unquote fair and equal opportunity playing field, because it's not. And I'm not going to sit here and go down a warpath on this show on a Sunday about why the Reds can't be good, blah, blah, blah. Well, look at the Guardians. Look at the Rays. Look at the Twins. You pick your name out of a hat. There's 30 teams in this league, okay? And about, 24 of them? Call it 22 of them are more or less smaller market teams. Okay, you're going to have an opportunity every year to pick one or two of those because guess what? You can get lucky at times. You can just run into luck. Are you going to convince me that the Guardians, the Guardians, maybe they get lucky. They run into 3 or 4 or 5 players they drafted, or they just ran into a trade that worked out in their favor, and they have some sustained success for a minute. Sure, maybe the Rays can do it. Maybe they're able to do it for 5 or 6 years. But I want to see any of these teams that are going to be able to do this over the course of a decade stretch or a 15-year stretch. And I think the answer is going to be slim to none. So that's the first issue. That doesn't mean that you can give the whole organization a pass. The second issue is 100% going to be, on my opinion, the ownership group, because they can't play in the same sandbox that they're going to need to play in order to be successful more times than not. So do you want to blame Major League Baseball for that problem? Or do you want to blame the fact that you're an ownership group that basically has bought a stock car, right? You're taking the stock car and you're putting it into the NASCAR race, and you've come to the realization that, yeah, you're rich, but you ain't as rich as these other guys. And these other guys got way more money, and they got way more resources, and they're putting way more effort into that product. And you get down to the racetrack every single week, and you start to scratch your head, and you're like, wow, why in the world are we never winning any of these races? Well, I don't know, because clearly these other folks have invested a significant amount of more money, time, effort, energy in making sure that they are the best. Now, you might ask yourself, well, I mean, if the ownership group were to just spend a ton of money and go out and they win, would they be able to recoup those funds? I'll be honest, I don't 100% know this answer, but I would say the risk versus the reward in that situation is never going to add up for any relatively simple-minded businessman to do, unless you're a hobbyist, unless you're a mega billionaire that just treats this as a hobby. Then you're never going to do that. So then let's go one layer deeper. Okay, well, if we're not going to be upset at the ownership group because of that, then we need to have the best damn front office that can draft, make trades, and go out and penny pinch all over the place and find a competitive team. And the reality is they're put underneath they're asked to compete under unfair circumstances. And to be quite frank with you, they've had some pieces that have worked out unbelievably well. The only concern I have at this point is if anything goes wrong, Nick, in this plan, if you have one thing go bad or this go bad, then it kind of like as a house of cards, it's going to fall completely apart. If Matt McClain and TJ Friedel and let's just say CES and Noelve Marte, if two of those guys don't pan out, heaven forbid I say three of them, then you're starting all over again. And you got to go find a solution, and the only solution is truly money, is to go out and spend money to fix it. And I don't think they have it. And then I guess the last piece of this long rant of mine is, and the guy that gets the axe all the time is the manager. The guy that sits in the dugout and makes decisions on a nightly basis. I got news for you. You put David Bell in a Dodgers uniform right now, and I got a damn good feeling that he's going to be the National League Manager of the Year. And you put Dave Roberts in a Reds uniform right now, and half the chat and half the Cincinnati is going to talk about how big of an idiot David Roberts is, and he has no chance of ever winning anything, and you need to ship him out of town. That's the truth. That's how I feel the truth is. Now, again, I believe it so wholeheartedly that I can say that is the truth. But maybe you think that maybe people believe differently. And that's why I'm hated at times, because I come off as if everything I say, that's an opinion, to be clear, is a fact. But I don't think I said anything in that whole entire 25-minute rant that was inaccurate. I digress.
No, the other thing I'd add is the Reds just don't have the depth built up to sustain these kind of injuries. And I hope that they're
And why is that?
Now. Well, because they did a lot of things wrong for a long time. They wasted a whole decade after the first failed rebuild. They wasted a lot of time. I mean, it takes, like, the Guardians and the Orioles, like, they just didn't magically overnight, and the Rays too, they didn't magically overnight become this machine that can keep pumping things out. And they're also have years where things just don't go right and it completely falls off the tracks. But the Reds don't have enough depth built up. Now, will they get there or not? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but that's the thing that's the most glaring this year, is just that there's just not there's nothing behind these guys yet. And that's what you have to work to build up, and that's a process. I mean, and that's something you have to grind out. I mean, every single move has to have value. It
Yeah.
takes time to build that up. It doesn't happen overnight.
Do you feel like, and maybe I'm wrong for saying this, but this is how I truly believe in this whole situation. It's like, do we expect Indiana's football program to win the Big Ten every year? No, we don't, because we don't have a dog in the fight. We don't. Maybe no offense to Indiana football, maybe Hoosier Daddy is, so no disrespect. But if you're looking at it from a bystander point of view, Indiana football. Can Indiana football possibly compete with Ohio State? Could they possibly win the Big Ten? Yeah, Nick. Guess what has to happen? They gotta get a little lucky. They gotta find some prospects, if you want to call it that, and they get a Michael Penix Jr. that comes through, and they can compete with Ohio State. But guess what Ohio State can do? They can realize that their quarterback sucks. They can just go right in the transfer portal and get another one. And we can't do that, is what I'm getting at. So it's a little disheartening at times. And that's where we're at. And I'm just overly concerned, not about this season. I'm not concerned about this season. If you think, and I'm not trying to be too crazy, if you think I care that the Reds lost today 8-2 in the grand scheme of life, no, I don't. The bigger concern I have is that the organization that I love, the franchise that I love, I sometimes don't see the light at the end of the tunnel because I also know what they're up against. And I know what this ownership group truly has at their disposal when it comes to means. And it's just not enough. It's not enough. And I just plead with them. I beg of them that it's not a terrible thing to look yourself in the mirror and say to yourself, can I compete in this league or not? And if I got to make excuses and I got to come up with some kind of scenario or tell people why this is this XYZ, I run it like a nonprofit, and Major League Baseball is it doesn't, the checks and balances don't add up. I agree. We can agree on that. But the problem is that it's not going to change. And if you can't play in this game, then you got to do yourself a service and just get out. And if it's all about just making money and that's all we care about, then I would say that there's got to be a better way to make money that's a little less stressful than having your name, your family name, drugged through the mud time and time and time again. And maybe I'm completely off base about saying that they don't have the resources to go do it. And if I am off base, then go and do the damn thing this offseason. Fix some problems. Go spend some real money. We'll see if they do that. And I'm not saying they don't spend some money, Nick. Let me be very clear what I'm saying. But you got to come and actually spend the actual totality of the money that's needed. It can't just be some cute little project where you go sign, a couple $25, $30 million contracts, and you're like, wow, look at us. The game's changed. The Dodgers signed a guy for $1 billion this offseason, and we're getting excited about a $20 million dollar contract, and we're cheering on and waving our flags about how excited we are because the ownership group's committed to signing Nick Martinez. Now, I know I'm using extreme examples here, but that's where we're at. And I hate to be too over the top tonight, but Carson Spiers, glad to see you through the ball. All
right. A couple things, I would say is, number one, the light at the end of the tunnel is what the Reds had a higher payroll than the Orioles and Guardians this year. So eventually, when you build up that depth, you can give yourself a chance. Now, you have to have things go right, like those franchise did. You have to have good people in place.
Right.
Not good people, great people in place to make sure that happens. As far as, sure. If there's someone that wants to come in and spend all their money on players, great. I'm certainly not going to sit here and pretend like I'm some economic expert here, but the Reds reported, $53 million in operating income last year. So if you add that to their payroll, that puts them 16th in Major League Baseball in payroll. They put every single penny of that.
Yeah,
So,
right. It's just not
like,
enough.
they spend every single extra penny,
I know.
and then still on top of that, as I've said many times, you think if the Reds start spending more, the Cubs aren't going to start spending more? The Cardinals aren't going to start spending more? Like, you think they're just going to be like, yeah, we'll let the Reds catch up to us? I'm sure the Wrigleyville would love that, right? I mean, so again, it's just that's how it is. Sure, they could probably spend more. They can spend more, but the Reds' cap is so much lower than a lot of other teams.
I mean, it's a fair question of how high will people be willing to pay players before there's a breaking point. I think that there's a clear issue with the league. And if you can't keep, I'm just going to say it relatively simply put. If my son, who watches the Reds on a daily basis, at some point realizes that he's watching a product that his favorite team has a slim to none chance to having a good or above average baseball team most of the seasons that he watches, or he can at least aspire to expect that, then the league will die. The interest in this sport will die in these smaller markets. It already somewhat has. And that's up for for Manfred to figure out. I'm not here to. That's a whole nother ball of wax that we can get into, which I'm sure we will have time to discuss at some point on Chatterbox Reds. We'll find out. I mean, that's my biggest thing, Nick. We got to find a solution, and it feels like the solution is we are starting to pay some of the debts. We're paying the debts of mistakes that were made yesteryear, and it felt like we might have avoided those debts, Nick, because we got lucky. I'll call it luck. That's what I'm going to call it. We got lucky, and we had a core group of young kids that were ahead of schedule, and they played the game in a fun way, and all of a sudden, it just hit the fan. And you got injuries, and you got some bad breaks, and you had some regression, and all of a sudden you look up and you're thinking to yourself, you had one thing, and you're not sure if you really, truly had it. And now I'm wondering to myself, we have arguably one of the best baseball players that we might ever see in our lifetimes playing for the Reds right now. Now, that's some of the, that's an over-exaggeration. No, I'll say it straight in the face of the camera again. We are going to watch one of the best baseball players that will ever play for this organization for at least the next 5 seasons. And I would love to know what in the absolute hell are we going to do about this situation while we have the opportunity. I don't want to let it go to waste. I'm not saying you just mortgage the entire future, Nick, but I'm not going to sit here and wait and expect and pray that Sal Stewart's going to come up in 2027 and that's our answer. Now, I know I'm using him as an example, but that's my point. So I'm hopeful that this Castellini ownership group says to themselves, you know what? We're going out. 2029, if we can't re-sign Elly, we're out of here because we already know what the hell's coming anyways from this fan base. They're going to kill us anyway. We're going to go out and we're going to find a way over the next 4 or 5 years to figure it out. And you know what? Maybe I'm wrong in thinking that, but I don't. I have to have some kind of hope, and that's where I'm going to hang my hat on, I guess, is that hope. And I could be completely off base, and I know people are going to make fun of me for believing in the ownership group, but you got to do something. Or you can call 988.
People hate me for it, so I don't really care at this point, but this team's not far away. They're not far off. They've had a crap year where they made some mistakes. They have had bad luck, and it could completely flip around. I was texting with a friend, really good friend, Michael, today, and we were talking about, he reminded me of the 2011 season, and this season has all the feels of that season where injuries went wrong. That team had a bad record in one-run games. Just nothing went right. And then the next year, they turn around, they win 97 games. Now, they changed some of that look on their own because they made a couple really good moves that offseason, bringing in Matt Latos, bringing in Sean Marshall. That changed their luck. But Matt Latos and Sean Marshall didn't win them 97 games on their own. A lot of it was just some of the things flipped. And the good news for the Reds is they have one of the most, if not the most coveted position player in baseball for his contract in Elly De La Cruz.
Yep.
And Hunter Green is an absolute bona fide star pitcher. That's a pretty good starting point. They got a lot of other pieces around them. They got an important offseason to fill the holes. A challenging offseason. Last offseason, it was very obvious what you needed. You needed to go get pitching. You needed to go get one hitter. Like, it wasn't really like a lot of debate. This offseason, you have a lot of players where their 2025 could go one way or another. And you have to try to guess and make your best judgment on which way they'll go. And it's going to be tough work. And so they got their work cut out for them this offseason. But this team's not far away from being a team that next year you look up and they're 15, 20 games over 500. And it was all here all along.
Biggest situation that we will obviously discuss probably later this year is going to be the situation with Matt McLain. I do want to table that for another discussion for another day. I think that there's a relatively reasonable conversation to be had about what you do with him. If he keeps having these flare-ups on these things, do you shut him down and maybe just say, hey, pack it in, we'll start over again. We just want to get you, make sure you're 100% healthy. Or do you want to try to get him back on the field this season? I'm going to openly say really quickly that you need to get back whoever the hell can play as fast as you can, because we need to start figuring some stuff out, whether or not these guys can play or not play. This isn't. Again, I have decided Matt McLain is the one guy that I was most sure about of all of them, even over Elly De La Cruz, personally. And I've now, because of the way things have gone, have decided at this point, nobody gets a free pass. I don't care what you've done. If you haven't been here for 2, 3, 4, 5 years and showcase what you're capable of doing, I don't believe in you. And I need to see it. And if I don't see it relatively soon, I'm looking for replacements. And I know that's relatively harsh, but that's where the Reds have to be, in my opinion, in order to be successful. And we'll see if they ultimately end up doing that. Jumping into the game today, I didn't get an opportunity, I told you this, to see much of this game, unfortunately, on my way back from the trip. Spiers threw the baseball. I'd assume he threw the ball relatively well, considering the bullpen came in a 3-2 game. Your overall thoughts on him?
I thought Spiers was really good today. He made that one mistake to Matt Chapman. The other homer was a Great American Ballpark special. You tip your cap and move along. Early in the game, he had pinpoint control. He was dotting the corners. I love the way he competes. And in a year where there's been a lot go wrong, Carson Spiers has been one that's absolutely gone right. Right now, I mean, I'm not banking on Carson Spiers in 2025, but there's no way in hell he's not not in my rotation right now. Someone's going to have to knock Carson Spiers out of my rotation next year. That's how good he's been. And it's a long season. We'll see how he gets when teams see him a second time, a third time. Giants had never saw him before, so I think that's typically advantage pitcher, to be fair. But I just love the season that he's done, and he's just an incredible competitor, an incredible story. Just sucks the Reds couldn't give him more offense today to have us talking a lot differently about him in the game today.
Right. Well, the thing about Spiers, and again, not talking about today because I don't think I can do that, but in general, I think that he's already showcased through multiple starts that he has the capabilities of being a successful, not journeyman. I don't want to make it sound like he's going to always be like a number 5 type starter, but I think he clearly has showcased that he can be a consistent glue guy in a rotation that might not get to the levels of Hunter Green ever or Nick Lodolo, but he certainly could be somebody that you are more than happy to rely upon to throw and eat up innings. And I'm not, Bronson Arroyo had a hell of a career, so I am not going to 100% confirm and or put it directly on Spiers to be him. But that's kind of my thought process when I think of Spiers is like, you know what? I never thought of Bronson Arroyo as a full stop guy, but I always felt good about it. It wasn't like, oh, damn, Arroyo's throwing. So Spiers, I think, can be that.
We got to chat. I think it's worthy of bringing up.
Uh-oh.
I don't know. This is bold. I like the boldness. I'm not sure I 100% agree. From Chris R., I have more faith in Carson Spiers than Andrew Abbott. I don't think I could go that far, but I think it's a lot closer than a lot of other people think. I feel like Carson Spiers is a little less.
It feels like the Reds have to do, and here's the thing, like the trade deadline situation, it bodes no confidence. It gives me no confidence in saying that. It feels like the Reds are going to have to take a pretty sizable risk to get something in return that we all would be happy with, that we're going to be a little worried about what we're giving up on the front end. Period. Like, I don't know who it's going to be or what it's going to be, but if you want this team to get a serviceable bat that has any kind of team control, we're going to have to give something up that hurts. And it's going to come in the way of something. And I personally think, when I look at this organization, you can't have too many starting pitchers line. Okay, I get the sentiment. I understand the sentiment. But we've put way too much capital in that position to not try to leverage some of the resources we have in that position to help us somewhere else. It is quite literally as simple as that. And I don't know if it's Chase Petty. And I know you love Chase Petty. I don't know if it's Rhett Lauder. I don't know. I know it's not going to be Chase Burns because of just the situation of taking him number 2. I don't know if it's Spiers. I don't know if it's Andrew Abbott. I don't know if it's Nick Lodolo. But it's going to have to be somebody. It's going to have to be somebody that they're going to say, you know what? They might end up being an all-star. But the truth is we got to make a decision here. We can't have, it's almost like having, 5 great running backs. Well, that's great. I'm glad you think that you got 5 great ones, but they can't all play. So you got to pick a couple that you're willing to bet on and ride it. We'll see if they do that. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or not, but that's my thought on Spiers, is he's a guy that's going to be slept on, but maybe you could use him as leverage of saying, you know what? We're betting on Spiers. He's staying. Some of these other fringe guys or some of these other guys that have more notoriety, we're going to use that to our advantage.
I'll no doubt in my mind, if there is a team in baseball that values Andrew Abbott as a 3.41 ERA pitcher and says that's what we believe he is, you should trade Andrew Abbott tomorrow. Well, you can't tomorrow, but you get my point.
I get my point.
You should absolutely trade him. But again, as I've said many times before, other GMs are really smart at baseball and evaluating. Like, they're going to see the peripheral numbers. They're going to see the stuff plus numbers, and they're going to not want to give up what you would expect for a guy with the 3.41 ERA. So again, as always, it's such I always feel like I'm copping out so much at these like kind of conversations, but I honestly believe it. Like, what are you getting back for him? Okay, if you're getting a absolute crazy return for Andrew Abbott, then yeah, you trade him. If you're not, you keep him. Like, it's that with like everyone. So, but yeah, I mean, he would absolutely be the guy that if there's a team out there, and there maybe there is, that values him like that, okay, this is our top of the rotation guy, then yeah, I think you should move on. I think that's the kind of player that you could make the risky move and get the actual return that's a big bona fide piece, maybe even a major league piece, not a minor league piece. So, but again, it just depends on what other organizations view him as.
All right, jumping to the back half here. As always, we have game time. If you're looking to go to a sporting event, concert, or any place that might require a ticket, please download the Game Time app. Use the code CINCY, CINCY, for $20 off your first purchase. That's CINCY, Cincy, to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. As always, we talked about this app many, many times. We are frequent users ourselves. 2 clicks, check out. You can see the seats wherever it is that you might want to sit. It even gives a little rating in there about how they think the value is going for those specific tickets. And download the Game Time app, and they are a official Major League Baseball marketplace for ticket resales. 988, already mentioned in the show, as always. If you are going through a tough time or you need any kind of help at all, or maybe you know somebody, please use the resource that is 988. text or call anytime. Mantherapy.org. Thank you to the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation for obviously supporting our show, but more importantly, for the work that they do and trying to make sure that people do understand that life is better with you in it. And I just want to say, as always, like, you get perspective when you do those reads sometimes. You know, I'm very thankful for the life that I have. I'm very thankful for the many people that support us in our show. There's not many fan bases or podcast communities or whatever term you want to call what we are. I don't know how you'd explain this at a Thanksgiving family, dinner, but we're in last place. Our team sucks. Our team sucks. And we got 176 people, and we have people that watch and listen to us every single day, and you loyally chime in the chat. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I don't know how good this team will be for the rest of the way. We obviously have decided that we're idiots, that we're knuckleheads, that we're going to do these shows after every single game. And you know what? The crazy thing is, some people are like, well, you never thought about the fact that they were going to suck, did you? Yeah, we actually did. We did. They were supposed to win like 64 games last year or whatever it was. I don't know what it truly was. And it turned out to be pretty good. And we were like, well, this was kind of cool. And now, it turns out that maybe the 64.5 win thing was more or less for this year. We kind of reversed years. I don't know. But point is, I just appreciate the support. And I know we're all going to disagree on topics from here to here, here and there. And I know we're going to definitely have frustrations that we're willing and ready to vent on a nightly basis. When you're watching something that you love, that you put time into, that you take out of your life and you invest into it. We both understand that. And you might want to fire David Bell and fire Crawl and get the ownership group out of town tomorrow. And we might say, I don't know if that's going to make a difference. But we're all Reds fans. And if anything, I'll be honest with you, it makes you a tougher person. If you can grind through what we've been through the last 10, 15, some maybe 20, some 25. I don't feel bad for the people that are like 50-year fans. You guys got to see like one of the world's best baseball players, teams I've heard. I've seen the bobbleheads. I've seen the pennants. I've been told about the Big Red Machine. So I don't feel as bad for them. But, maybe for people like our age who quite literally haven't seen a playoff series win our entire lives, we can all sympathize with each other. We can all understand where we're at. But we're Reds fans at the end of the day, and that day is coming. When the hell it is, I don't know. But it's coming. And we're going to sit here and we're going to talk about it until it comes. All right. Espinal was the deep drive of the day, Nick. I don't want to say I apologize to him and his family, but I do want to say that I am very thankful that he was able to resurrect what was basically looking like a career-ending season. Like, it was. His career was over if he didn't figure it out. And he kind of has figured it out. Now, I don't know what your opinion is of this guy, but I don't know if that'll save him going into next year. Maybe he'll be like Tony Kemp and he'll just be all over the place forever. But he's been a bright spot in what has been a dark time in the last basically 3 or 4 weeks.
Tony Kemp's actually like a great comp because Tony Kemp's a guy that has played pretty well at like AAA all year, but he kind of fell out of favor and hasn't been able to get back up to the big leagues. And yeah, it looked like Espinal was kind of heading that way. I mean, right now, Espinal feels like a guy you probably want to keep on your roster next year, or at least you want to keep him as an option. He's played really, really well. I hope that, you're starting to see him make a lot more contact of late. Like, he's had this great, 8 home runs for him, a career high, slugging 383 now. I mean, he was 335 last year, so he's gone up quite a bit. You hope that maybe he got into Great America Ballpark, was, trying to launch the ball a little bit more. Now he's finding a little bit better of that balance. And like right now he has a 79 WRC plus. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, he's been incredible, but you see the potential of a guy that could be a league average guy with a little bit of pop, better contact than he showed at this point. His contact getting more towards his career norms. and plays good defense at multiple spots. So yeah, I think he's had an awesome year. One of the few guys that's played really well of late. He's been consistent. And the next topic, Espinal's almost made it to where you feel like you could play him at third base every day and you wouldn't lose a beat.
Yeah. Candelario is going to be he's not reached the Mike Moustakas level yet. But if he's going to be this inconsistent, he's not going to be much of a fan favorite. And I don't think that's breaking news, but it's just disappointing because, Nick, and I know, Nick, you're a kind of person that you love the Reds first, right? This is how I see it. I'm gonna say something that I believe about you that maybe you don't see yourself, or maybe it's not true because it's my opinion, to be clear. But you love the Reds first. Your fan has always become first since I've known you, of course. It's blinded you a little bit to some of the things that you otherwise, if you've seen some other team do XYZ, you would have said XYZ because you don't have a dog in the fight. But when it comes to Reds and Reds players and decisions that they make from time to time, I think from yourself, and there's no reason to say that this is a bad thing, but you have either wishful thinking or hoping that maybe something that you would have believed somewhere else won't be the case here. And Candelario is a guy in a community that obviously, I'm not saying that you're all in on analytics or something like that. I'm not trying to put you in that crowd. But for somebody that obviously believes in big numbers and believes that there's clearly some evidence to success with this type of analytical model approach, Candelario was not viewed as a great option for the Reds to sign by some in that community. In fact, some had called it a disaster. I wonder if, and this is a long way of me saying, I wonder if Candelario wouldn't have been signed by the Reds and he got signed by the Pirates or somebody else. Do you feel differently about what decision was made at the front office and how they went about this?
Funny, I was actually looking up this today because I was like, maybe Candelario was the biggest whiff. Go look through the free agent bats that were signed this offseason. There's not a whole lot. The one that I think right now feels like it would be the biggest would be Matt Chapman. Obviously, we saw what he did today. But Matt Chapman was atrocious the first 2 months with San Francisco. He's red hot right now. He's playing the great Gold Glove defense. Candelario's defense has been the most disappointing thing for me this year because I thought that was supposed to be a lot better. He was supposed to be a capable third baseman, and now you're pretty much having to make him you're not even able to use him over there. So that's been disappointing. But, I mean, you look up and down the free agent contracts, any of the guys that were signed over $10 million, I think the best was like a 110 WRC plus. Like, that's Cody Bellinger. Like, that's where he's been. Justin Turner's been, these guys have been slightly above average. So, I don't know. Candelario, you hope that he's a guy that can settle in a little bit more too. I can't tell you how many times this year, Trace, where we felt completely different about Candelario 1 week than we feel 2 weeks later. Like, if he gets hot in 2 weeks, we're going to feel completely different. And then 2 weeks later, we might feel completely different again. That's kind of the year he's had. The most positive thing I can look at him is batting average of balls in play this season is 261. His career is 293. So that evens out a little bit. But Great American Ballpark's a ballpark that I think sometimes your batting average of balls in play will naturally dip a little bit. So, I don't know. He hasn't been terrible, but he hasn't been good. Jeimer Candelario is the perfect example of the 2024 Reds in a nutshell. Like, this team has been like between 3 and 6 games below 500 for almost 2 months. I think they had one day where they got to within 2 games or 2 games below 500.
Yeah.
They haven't been good enough to climb back in the race, but they haven't been bad enough to completely fall out of the race. They've just been this team that just is, it's wild how they haven't had a big streak one way or another since the 7-game win streak.
I think that being out of the race is all relative. That's my only pushback to that is that, you can sit here and be like, well, they haven't been bad enough to be out of the race because you look at the wild card standings and they're only, 4 or 5 out. Okay, well, that's fine. But let's stop comparing ourselves to what others are doing in this league, which is not very good, and just try to compare ourselves to what we expect them to be at, or what it's almost like looking yourself in the mirror and not trying to compare yourselves to others all the time and just focus on you. And I think if you did that, you'd be disappointed, and everybody would be disappointed in this team severely. And I think the one thing that you keep doing is, and I'm not saying you, I'm saying in general, the one thing that you could do is, any loser's mentality, in my opinion, can be derived from, well, I can get away with doing this, or I don't want to work hard because I seen someone else not working hard. And if they're not able to work hard, then I guess, it's okay for me not to work hard. My point in saying that is like, just because we're 5-6 games under 500 and we're telling ourselves that, well, look at the rest of the league. No one else is really that good either, right? That's not good enough. That's not the way that any organization that obviously is going to be prideful and or successful is going to operate. And I'm not saying the Reds are doing that internally, but I don't want to do that either as a fan. It's like, is this team what we expected them to be? No. The biggest question I have, Nick, quite honestly, and I don't think we have an answer on this show to do, is why did Vegas think that this team was going to finish at 500 or less? Why did they think that before all these injuries? What is it about this roster makeup that we have holes that we don't think that we're going to be fulfilled? And I guess my point would be, if you're Nick Kroll and you're that in that group, you got to figure out what that is and address it. And maybe they can't address it because of the things we talked about previously. But I'd like to wake up some magic morning this winter, pray to God this already happens, and they come out with the MLB projection totals, and they give you the over-unders for all the teams in Major League Baseball, and the Reds are at like 86 wins. And I'm like, what did we do to fix it? I want to know what the Vegas man knows. And I just feels like we've convinced ourselves we are better than we actually were, and I want to know what those holes are, and we need to fix them. Simple as that. And Noel V. Marte might be a pretty big reason as to why they might have those projection totals one way or the other, depending on what he becomes.
So on the projection totals, the funny thing is like the Zips projections was actually down on the Reds pitching. Like they had Hunter Green projected to have an over almost 4.5 ERA. They were way off on the pitching, and they oversold the offense. Like Christian Encarnacion Strand was, I think, supposed to hit 28 home runs. So it's been a weird year where the projection systems have kind of been right, but I think they went about it in a completely wrong way, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
I do think two things can be true, though. Like, I'm disappointed. Like, let me make very clear. I'm very disappointed the Reds are 5 games below 500. I did not, on opening day, expect the Reds to be 5 games below 500 on August 4th. I'm disappointed in that. That can be true, and I can also look at the standings, and now it's 6.5. So it's got, like, I feel like the difference between, like, 5 and 6 is so much more than, like, 2 and 3. Like, you start getting 5, 6, 6, 7. It really is far back. But I think two things can be true. I can be disappointed, but also have realized for the last month that this team was still 1 8-game win streak away from completely flipping their season around. So I think both things can be true, where you could be disappointed, not be happy about where you're at, but also still kind of have some hope because you are 1 streak away from completely changing your season.
You are. You just got to ask yourself, how in the hell is that streak going to happen based off the play that I watch on a nightly basis when you get a guy like Ty France who basically just get cut from a competent team, and all of a sudden, again, I'm not saying lineup matters, then all of a sudden you boom, look, he's our cleanup man. It's like, wow, the garbage man is now the cleanup man for your Cincinnati Reds. Interesting. It just tells me that we suck. I could be wrong. That's one way to know, is that when one team wants to get rid of somebody, basically, and you pick him up, and boom, there he is. He's your cleanup man. Mike Ford, I don't know, he's playing in Japan now. But you know what? He was your cleanup man. He was the Saving Private Ryan there for your Reds team for a minute. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, But that's how you know your team sucks, is when you basically have a bunch of guys that are going to be bagging groceries in a couple weeks, just turn out, you look at the lineup card, and whoop, there they are. They are hitting cleanup. This team has had signs for a long time that they are not good. And we have all tried to ignore them. It's directly in our face. It feels like you've been getting texts about, well, I'm busy, I'm this, I'm that. And you're, oh, have you went on a second date with this woman? No, I haven't. Why not? Well, she had yoga to do. She had a book club this day, that day, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Maybe she's just not into you. Maybe that's why you haven't gone on the second date. And I think we've convinced ourselves that maybe she's just busy. And we've convinced ourselves that maybe this team can just get an 8-game winning streak, Nick. I don't know how the hell they're going to do that with this team, but maybe they will. And if they do, Nick, I'm going to tell you right now, I'll give you a Christmas bonus. And not only that, I will completely say I'm completely wrong. I'll wear Trace's stupid shirt for the rest of the season if they have an 8-game winning streak. Simple as that. For the rest of the season. Every day, I'll put the shirt on. Trace is stupid.
I don't think I said I expected it. Did I?
You didn't say expected it. You said if they could do it.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, well, if my aunt had nuts, she'd be my uncle.
They swept the Yankees. They swept the Dodgers. Like, none of this makes sense. Like, baseball doesn't make sense. That was more my point. I don't expect it by any stretch of the imagination. I think my words keep getting twisted. I think people they wait for me to say one thing, and they're like, oh, there it is. There it is. I didn't say I expect it. I just said it could happen.
I don't think it could happen.
There's some folks in this chat that better pray it doesn't happen.
All right, fair enough. I hope it does happen, but I just can't get my brain, like your brain, to think that it could happen. I would be shocked.
I would be shocked if it happened. I would be shocked. I was shocked the Reds swept the Yankees at Yankee Stadium. I was shocked the Reds swept the Dodgers. Those things make no sense.
Right. But 8 games is a lot. Like 3 games, you might catch a heater. Then you come back down to earth. 8 games, it's like you got to catch a heater and then another heater, and then you got to win 2 more. I don't know. That seems a little crazy.
Where's Ricky Karcher when you need him?
Yeah, well, that's fair. That's fair. I'll tell you where he's at. He's probably in the MILB somewhere. Reds, speaking of MILB, let's jump into some Reds MILB. I know it's Sunday night. That means that there's going to probably be some finals. And I just want to say that you do an unbelievable job of actually going through and doing this each and every single day. For those that are wondering, this also is in podcast form, along with many other things that are not really particularly covered on this show. So if you wouldn't mind, please go and give our podcast, Chatterbox Reds, on all the major podcast platforms. Not going to name them all because they are literally endless at this point. Just give us a like and give us a 5-star rating and give us a review if you can. But more importantly, listen to the podcast. So, Nick, little Reds MILB. What do we got?
All right, Reds MILB, Louisville, they're struggling. They lost 5-2 to Scranton. The Bats have lost 11 of 13. Resigns did not start. Came in as a pinch hitter in the top of the 9th with the bases loaded. He lined out to end the game. Hines is now 3 for 19 since he got optioned to AAA. Jacob Hurtubise 1 for 4. Blake Dunn 0 for 3 with a walk. Davis Wenzel, probably a guy that I think maybe should start paying attention to. He was a guy the Reds traded for at the trade deadline, kind of the last second move that no one really thought much of. 1 for 3 with a walk. This guy does have some power. If the Reds were to option Noelvi Marte, I think he's probably the guy that gets called up. So that's kind of why I think maybe he's a guy to watch. We'll kind of see how that plays out. Michael Trotwine hit his 8th home run of the year. Justice Sheffield, pretty solid effort. 5 innings, 2 runs, struck out 5. Tough outing for Casey Legumina. 3 hits and 3 runs. Didn't get through a full inning. Some other news from the Bats. They released Connor Capel, and then Brooks Kriske was placed on the temporary inactive list. Tough day for Chattanooga. It's the wrong. Yeah, they lost game 1, 6-4. Lost game 2, 4-3. The first game was a suspended game from Friday. That got suspended. They tried to pick it up on Saturday. They got 1 out, and then it got suspended again and then finished. So that was kind of a wild couple of days for Chattanooga. But anyways, they get swept. They're 31-69. Nick Northcutt hit another homer, 23 home runs, leads the Southern League, 6 more than anyone else. Ruben Ibarra was 2 for 4. Austin Hendrick did not play. And then down in High A, the Dayton Dragons, they lost 5-3 to Lansing. The Dragons, they're clinging to the second half playoff spot. They're a half game up. Hector Rodriguez, 1 for 4, continues to lead the Midwest League with 109 hits. Next best is 104. Carlos Jorge was 0 for 4, but good to see him play. He hadn't played since Thursday. He left the game. Didn't see any indication on why that was, but always a suspicion there could be an injury there. But he was playing, so that was good. Jay Allen on base 3 times. Ethan O'Donnell, he's getting hot. 2 for 4, hit his 5th home run of the year. He's hitting 404 extra base hits over his last 7 games. Cam Collier got the day off. The Tortugas, they were rained out. They are a game and a half out of a second half playoff spot. So that's your Reds MILB.
All right. Thank you for that. And also thank you for holding it down this weekend while I was gone. Got a unusual situation as well. I got kind of sick. I know I was kind of teetering on sick there the night before I left when the Reds had an off day. Got pretty sick. Turns out that I passed that sickness along to my wife and have been gone the last few days. So shout out to our wives, as always, too, by the way, for letting us do this. So why I'm still married, sometimes I'm not sure, because I'm not really understanding as to why I'm privileged enough to be put up with. But I'll keep trying to get away with it as long as I can. But I also thank you to Andrea and basically everybody else that makes it possible for you to do this. So I think I've thanked everybody I can on this show, hopefully.
We can always thank Craig.
I'll thank God, too. But and thank Craig.
I think Craig, our
Yes.
MVP that keeps us
He's
floating in between. And shout out to Greg for filling in last minute on
he's
Friday
like
night.
he's like Fernando Cruz, but doesn't give up runs.
We got to find a better I was going to say Thiago Espinal, but that still doesn't seem fair.
That means he's pretty horrific to begin the year.
Miguel Cairo, 2010.
Mm.
That's maybe the best. I have to go back a ways.
I don't think he'd like Bubba Thompson. Yeah, I don't know. You want to keep naming players this year that he'd be disappointed to be compared to, and then just try to figure out, are we good or not good?
He's Stuart Fairchild versus lefties.
All right. Well, now you're getting somewhere. Hated by
Spencer
some
Steer?
still. That might be a good one, though. He's still hated.
Maybe Spencer Steer. There you go.
Okay. Well, I would have taken the Stuart Fairchild versus lefties. That's still solid. I'll take it. I know some people are like, oh, no, look at this. But you know what? I like Stuart
Buck
Fairchild.
Farmer.
Buck, yeah.
Always reliable.
Yeah, he's actually had a damn good season. I was trying to trade him last year, but that's here nor there. Who, what, when, where, and why is where we're going next.
All right, Reds start a 4-game series against the Miami Marlins. It'll be Nick Martinez up against Roddery Munoz. Marlins are 3-2 actually since the trade deadline when they traded their entire roster. They won back-to-back games against the Braves in today's edition of baseball that does not make sense in Atlanta. So I'll have a lot more. I got to dig more into this. I got to write a whole preview on the Marlins. So you'll have to wait for the podcast for more information on tomorrow's starters. But yeah, so this is a series for the Reds that obviously, look, if you're going to have any chance of making something of the season, get a chance here. They're only going to face one pitcher that I would say is pretty good in Max Mayer in the series. I think Nick Lodolo, they haven't actually announced Nick Lodolo yet on Tuesday, but I think Nick Lodolo goes on Tuesday. So that'll be the toughest one, but you're going to face a lot of bad pitchers. The entire Marlins starting pitching rotations on the IL have been traded. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know what to expect.
Well, we'll find out. I mean, we got to watch them. We'll watch them. And whether it's like pulling teeth or whether perhaps it's like eating ice cream, I don't know. I have a feeling it'll be probably closer to one than the other. But you know what? We're going to do it, and we're going to be here. So until then, we really do truly appreciate everybody for coming in here and spending a Sunday night. With us. I know football's right around the corner. Many of you probably in this chat enjoy football. Listen, college football. I love college football. It's right around the corner as well. So we can commiserate in the chat, but there's other things to watch. The Olympics is on too. So shout out to Scotty Scheffler for coming all the way back and winning a gold for the Team USA. So shout out to him. I'm sure I'm missing other folks. Who else is from the USA has I missed over the last few days of trying to rack up some gold medals?
I don't know, but I very much enjoyed Scotty Scheffler waking up to that future.
Did you
this morning?
Did you?
Yeah. The
guy's ridiculous. I mean, the guy legitimately. He's like.
I thought that was a loss. I thought that was a losing bet.
Not a human. He's not a human.
I was like, wow, I won that. That was cool.
Yeah, he's not.
You know what I like? The USA team has sucked is the 3x3 basketball. The women's team's still alive. It's really fun. It's like 10 minutes.
You like the 3-on-3. I have not watched it. I got to be honest. I'm going to say something that's inappropriate. I seen the USA team, 3-on-3 team. I seen Jimmy Fredette. His old ass out there is like 40-something years old. And I'm like, listen, with all due respect, that can't be our best 3-on-3 team. I don't know how the hell they got picked. I don't know what the protocols are to get into it. But you can go into Rucker Park right now. You can go into Chicago. You can go into any of the inner cities, quite frankly, and go to a street game and find better 3-on-3 guys than we put up at the Olympics. So we need to be better.
There's actually, I know the answer to this. I'm sure no one cares, but I'm going to tell you anyways. It's a whole process for that. Like you have to play for years, and you have to accumulate so many like points in terms of games played in 3x3 competition to be eligible. So you just can't go call up your top college guy or whatever. They have to play like these official 3x3 competitions to be eligible. So it's a whole thing. Fredette got hurt in the first game and didn't play, so that kind of hurt. But the women play tomorrow. I just think it's cool because it's like 10 minutes, and I don't have a whole lot of time.
You like the format?
I don't have a whole lot of time to sit down and watch something. But I know, okay, this game's at 3:30. I can watch a 10-minute game. It's fun. It's fast paced. I think it's a cool event that there's not a whole lot of, Yeah,
that's fair. Well, I'll tell you this.
The more you know.
Despite the way that you may think this or not, and despite how you may sometimes think that I come off, I still do love the Cincinnati Reds. It's been a one-way relationship most of my life, and I'm sure that there's probably better relationships that have been had when it comes to a team and their fandom. But I'm still here for it. Because one thing that I do know in my life is that there's been a lot of times where other people have looked at my life and probably thought, oh, look at poor Trace. He doesn't have this, he doesn't have that, and he doesn't have this. And you're right. I didn't have those things. But when I got a little bit older and I did get those things, it felt a hell of a lot better knowing what I went through to get it. And we're going to get it at some point. I promise. Go Reds. We'll see you tomorrow.